The women in Johnny's orbit were obsessed with him. He seemed to be like a drug. They couldn't break the addiction. He would make a point of singling one out and love bombing them nearly to make them feel $1 million, and they're just swooning at this Johnny Creswell. He loved it. You know, he was the centre of attention.
He wasn't good academically. He made up for that on horseback. He was seen as, you know, a bit of a rock star. He was almost like a magician with women. He was able to control and manipulate them as if he was playing a hand of cards. Nobody knew the secrets of his world. So hard to believe that Jonathan Dowdall has, you know, he's on the launch pad to a new life now at this stage.
Yeah. I mean, God, he's been in since, I think, is it 2017?
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah. Since.
So he's nearly 10 years in prison. Well, he's 8.
Yeah.
And originally went in for the waterboarding, torturing.
That's it. Yeah. And then obviously pled to the Regency facilitating that. He got 4 years for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, October 29th is his official release date. But I'd say it's probably more than likely he'll get out maybe a few days before then. Well, he certainly can't be let out any later than then. So.
And it's a little bit different to a usual high-profile prisoner that is being released. Obviously, there's a clamber to try and find out day and time. We often will...
be sitting outside the jail for days.
Yeah, sitting outside the jail. Or some poor photographers there from 6 a.m. in case somebody's let out early, etc., etc. Everybody knows the way it goes. And it's all for that photograph of how somebody looks like, because we haven't seen them in such a period of time. But A, I think that would be illegal with Jonathan Dowdall, and B, it's not going to happen because they're going to have to move him and very quickly get him out of the country to his new destination.
Yeah.
So let's start with what? Him going in 2017? What happened? Or go back a bit further maybe. Tell us about him.
Well, I mean, you know as much about him as I do. But... yeah, so look, he was very briefly a Sinn Féin councillor, I think for less than a year. Around the same time that he was a Sinn Féin councillor, he was involved in this horrendous horror waterboarding attack on, was it Alexander Hurley, who was trying to buy a motorbike from him and his father. And Jesus, there was video footage of this, which I'm sure you've seen as well, where, you know, it was a really disgraceful attack. They threatened to cut
the story really came up during well, obviously when he was charged in relation to it, but it came up because of the Regency attack and because the Gardaí had started to focus on Jonathan Dowdall and his involvement in the Regency hotel attack. I think they raided his home and searched it, and amongst various items they took was this USB key. When they put it into the computer, there's a video of this guy getting tortured, threatened, waterboarded in the garage. Yeah. And it's Dowdall and his father, Patrick, who are, you know, threatening him, claiming membership of the IRA, etc., etc. Now, the story that kind of followed was a weird one because this guy had responded to a done deal advertisement or one of these to a sale of a motorbike that Dowdall was selling, came along to look at it, and then they invited him for dinner. That bit I could never quite get.
No, and I had no idea why he accepted to go into their house and what happened. And I think he threatened to cut him up into pieces and feed him to this Doberman as well. And then there was an issue with the person who recorded this kind of horror event. I think Jonathan Dowdall admitted to perjury about that. So that was kind of one of the first times Jonathan Dowdall admitted that he was a liar, I suppose, that he had been a liar in a court of law.
So when he was, so he had been this Sinn Féin councillor, he had a very successful electricals business. Young guy in his 40s with a really nice house on the Navan Road, motorbikes, great cars, was doing really well in his business, obviously, which I think he set up in around 2007 from memory. He employed a lot of people, etc. So he really comes on our radar. In the aftermath of the Regency, there was a kind of a social media campaign that was obviously being run in the background by the Kinahans.
Yeah.
And he was named on that social media campaign, photographed. It was certainly news to me. But shortly afterwards, the raid took place. So the Gardaí too realised that Jonathan Dowdall was involved some way in the Regency.
Yeah. And I think he came to prominence like immediately afterwards because he chose to go on Liveline to discuss all this with Joe Duffy.
He did.
And he said, he essentially said, I'm a fine, upstanding member of the community. I have nothing to do with anything linked to the Regency. I have nothing to do with organised crime. I'm a former Sinn Féin councillor, etc., etc. And that was the first time I kind of became aware of him. Gardaí obviously thought something different. They suspected he was involved in the Regency, which he later admitted to being.
Yeah.
So that was, again, that's another example of Jonathan Dowdall being a liar.
Those very strong denials are always a little bit... I mean, had you been writing about this guy's suspected involvement and somebody came out in Liveline, you'd have a bit of a wobble.
Oh, definitely, yeah. But
most people keep their head down.
Why go on Liveline? I mean, it's never a good idea, is it? Like, if you're involved in criminality, which he clearly was, And
it was the first hint of that Walter Mitty sort of an ability to lie, an ability to believe in his own lies, essentially, that we got. So he's brought to court. Does he plead guilty to the torture of
I
Alex
think
Hurley?
there's a bit of humming and hawing, but eventually he's done, I suppose. And
both himself
him and his father, a lengthy jail sentence. Yeah.
So he's in jail, and Jerry Hutch is arrested on a European arrest warrant, brought back and charged in relation with the murder of David Byrne at the Regency. And Jonathan Dowdall is also charged.
Yeah.
And the two of them are facing murder charges. There's others there that are facing sort of conspiracy charges in relation to the murder, but the two of them are sort of shoulder to shoulder on this murder, which is trucking along. You know.
And I mean, I think there was such a fall from grace for Jonathan Dowdall. Like, he was a man, like you say, who was running this really successful electrical firm, employing a number of lads who were working as electricians. He himself was a qualified electrician. He's a lovely house on the Navan Road, like a really nice house, as we know, sold for 800 grand only a year or two ago. Like, he's a very successful man.
Yeah.
He's a wife, 4 children. Everything is going very much according to plan. And then everything falls apart in kind of the most spectacular way it can fall apart. He's suddenly in jail, like you say, in Wheatfield, beside Jerry Hutch. And he suddenly is like, how has my life come to this? How am I serving a lengthy jail sentence for this torture attack? And we have to remember about that torture attack. It only came to light because his house was raided over the Regency murder. So he was so bitter from then. He was like, I would not have got caught on this torture.
Well, because he recorded it and hung on to the bloody thing in the house.
Yeah, listen, of course it's all his fault. But in his head, this is all the Hutch gang's fault. I would have got away with this torture issue if it wasn't for the Hutch gang. And I'm sure he's regretting any involvement in the Regency murder in terms of him and his father booked the hotel room, essentially. That was their involvement. So he was involved, but he just felt his life, when he sat there in Wheatfield prison, he's like, this has fallen apart because of the Hutches, not me. And he just turned.
And we heard during the Regency trial that in the background during this period when he was in prison and he was facing murder charges himself, that he had reached out to the police and that there were secret meetings between him and another member of his family, and that he sort of told them this other story, and he told them that he had been duped and tricked by the Hutches, that he was prepared, I suppose, to plead guilty to a lesser charge in relation to what he'd done, but that, he wasn't going to go down for life because of this, and he was willing to go state witness, which is the greatest sin of the underworld.
Yeah.
And many in whatever you'd call the world we live in, that whole sense of
just turning rat,
turning Turk to save your own skin. It doesn't sit easy.
No, and you'd kind of have to wonder, in terms of his involvement in the Regency, was there some kind of gameplay there in terms of they charged him with murder?
Yeah.
They charged him, with murder. Obviously, he was never suspected of being a trigger man, and of course he wasn't. But was there some kind of gameplay there? I don't know. I mean, I think that's something we'll never know.
As in that he went state witness to get that charge dropped?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, he clearly went state. He clearly went state witness to get that charge dropped. But was he charged with that to get him to turn tout?
That has always been said in the background.
I mean, that's always been said.
That's always been in the ether. Was it a game plan sort of on behalf of the state, meaning,
yes.
Did they put the pressure on him? They could see he was a weak character. He'd already sort of suggested that he may, during his arrest in 2017 in relation to the Alex Hurley incident, plus being questioned about the Regency. We heard during the Regency trial that he kind of asked to speak to somebody when he was under arrest, from, was it SDU, the Special Detective Unit or something?
Mm-hmm.
He requested
I think it was MCI, yeah.
MCI. And he sort of threw out to them that, maybe I have something to say here. So he had sort of initiated something all the way back then.
He did.
Before he was charged with murder.
But was there something going on in the background that they felt that he could be someone who might be able to be initiated because they felt hard done by? I mean, this is someone who maybe felt he had nothing to lose. He was charged with murder. If he was convicted of that, then he was going to be spending the next 20 to 30 years behind bars. Did he have anything to lose?
And he, I think, Gerry Hutch has come and spoken himself, was very confident throughout that there wasn't the evidence on him to convict him of murder. His bigger fear was that he was being tried before the Special Criminal Court, where we know there is, a hefty conviction rate, where he felt his chips were down in that regard. But when it came to evidence, because they both had the book of evidence for the two murder charges, I think Gerry Hutch had a confidence that there was not the evidence there to convict him. Jonathan Dowdall, perhaps there might have been a bit more, because he did a lot of the talking in the car, certainly. In
those 10 hours of tapes, yeah. Like that was about a month after the Regency, was it, where they drove up?
And just to remind anybody who forgets, that was this famous journey that the two of them took up to the north, where Dowdall had arranged for Gerry Hutch to meet with the dissidents, where they spoke about the yokes, which the state said were the AK-47s, and they were trying to get rid of the yokes. These yokes were red hot. They needed to get them out of the Republic and give them to the dissidents, while they were also sort of trying to work out if they could bring the dissidents to the table as peacemakers between the Hutch and Kinahan factions. Gerry Hutch realised this was a really dangerous position that they were in after the Regency.
They were trying to do a couple of things, weren't they? Like it was high stakes stuff.
Yeah.
But like you listened to those 10 hours of tapes as well, and obviously a lot of them were played at the monk's murder trial, and the monk didn't say much. He was very careful to not say much. He kept his own counsel. I didn't get a sense that he trusted Jonathan Dowdall whatsoever. And Jonathan Dowdall did a lot of talking and told a lot of lies and said some frankly appalling things about suggesting kidnapping a woman who was linked to the Kinahan
Well, it was
side.
Joanne Byrne, Thomas Bomber Kavanagh's wife.
Yeah.
He was looking to either kidnap her or a child at an Irish dancing festival.
Like it was really kind of shocking stuff that he was, and he just he did a lot of that, and he did a lot of that at the monk's trial as well, And then his other main key piece of evidence was a claim by Jonathan Dowdall that he met Gerry Hutch in a park, as we know, in Whitehall, and he says Gerry Hutch was. The way he described Gerry Hutch sounds very different to the Gerry Hutch, I think, that we all know, I suppose, in terms of his demeanour, that Gerry Hutch was kind of panicking and admitted, according to John Dowdall, that he actually was one of the gunmen. And that ultimately was not believed in any way by the Special Criminal Court.
There was no corroborating evidence in regard to that, which is usually when you have a state witness. I think it was, under appeal, the original gangland cases that ever went before the Special Criminal Court were in relation to the murder of Veronica Guerin. And in those cases, it was ruled that, supergrass evidence has to be corroborated by other evidence to be accepted by a court. But Jonathan Dowdall, that piece of evidence that he was giving, that he had the meeting with Jerry Hutch, no one witnessed it, and the phones didn't tally to the day and time he said that happened.
Too, yeah.
His second piece of evidence was that he met Jerry Hutch in a sort of a darkened road and was handed the Regency key, or handed him the key for the Regency.
Yes, that he directly handed over the key.
And again, there was no witnesses to that brought forward to the court, so both those pieces weren't corroborated. But I suppose in all the while, and after Jonathan Dowdall, decides to go state evidence, takes the lesser charge of conspiracy, gets his 4 years, he is signed up to what we call the Witness Protection Programme, as are his father, his wife, four daughters.
I think, yeah.
Okay. So that's a lot of people to be protected. And the Witness Protection Programme, people have this misplaced belief that these witnesses are protected for the rest of their lives, which they aren't. They're protected until they give their evidence. And in the aftermath of that, they're signed off and they're helped to relocate somewhere else. And it's the detail of this that you have been writing about. And again, it shows a little bit of Jonathan Dowdall's personality.
Yeah, well, the one thing I thought was really interesting about it all, well, first of all, the whole thing it's so shrouded in secrecy. And you've written about the Witness Protection Programme, or sorry, they call it now the Witness Security Programme. I've no idea why they keep changing the name, because there's no transparency about anything else about the process. So why they changed the name is completely beyond me. But yes, he's agreed to enter this, and he was assessed for suitability, and he was found to be suitable. And so it seems are his family. And I think we know that legally we can't disclose anything we might know, not that we do know, where Jonathan Dowdall and his family are going within the next fortnight. We don't know. Only a handful of Gardaí know, and they certainly wouldn't tell us, nor should they, because this is about ensuring people's safety who've chosen to enter this life. But the issue with this life is that we don't know what happens next. But what we do know is that when they go and start this new life, the guards kind of wave bye-bye. And it's up to you then to take care of yourself. And you know that from some of the stuff you've done with Joey.
With Joey O'Callaghan.
Yeah.
His was a while ago, and you'd like to think that the system is better, but I'm not sure it is. They are certainly helped. It's like with like. The state can't be seen to be incentivising a witness, so they can't pay them.
Yeah.
Many people who aren't in prison would be on the dole in the run-up to giving their evidence. They have liaison officers who don't live with them or protect them around the clock. They sort of have to, they're out there. And they are brought to and from the court if they're not in prison. Dowdall in custody was a little bit of a simpler individual, but his family, his wider family, from the minute he went state witness, they were all protected somewhere, and at a huge cost to the state.
Definitely. And I mean, and they deserve to be protected because they're entirely innocent people who were not involved in anything to do with this. So they entirely deserve that. But I suppose it's every case is entirely different. So Dowdall obviously has a few quid. He sold his house in the Navan Road for 800 grand. So they have a certain amount of money to set them up. He's obviously a trained electrician. So that's a very transferable skill, I suppose. But then I've also heard that they don't ever want you to do that same work if you've done that before, because you might be too identifiable. So what kind of work Jonathan Dowdall and his wife might do, and potentially his father and like some of his daughters are adults as well. Like, we don't know, and it's and we shouldn't know in a way. But it's going to
be bloody hard. But
it's going to be.
I suppose on top of it, I think what we should know at this point is how much this whole thing has cost the taxpayer, because the Regency trial was a disaster from start to finish. Okay, 2 people were convicted of lesser charges. We nearly practically forget, well, Jason Bonney and Paul Murphy. I was going to say we nearly practically forget their names. They're still in there somewhere. They were convicted. But it was a huge embarrassment for the state and for the case of the state that Gerry Hutch walked free from that court.
It was. And as we both know, if they charged him with other offences, then he probably will be in prison right now at this moment. You know, he'd probably be doing 10, 15 years.
Suggested during the judgment that was read by Justice Tara Burns that she only had one charge to consider, and that was murder. Had there been charges around weapons, it might have been a different story.
Or conspiracy, or there could have been a few potential things, and that was a decision between the senior Gardaí and the DPP. We don't know who suggested what, but they came back with one charge that Gerry Hutch, murdered David Byrne.
But the decisions were also made that Jonathan Dowdall was suitable for witness protection, as were his entire family, and he was a suitable witness to put forward in the courts. Now, I'm not saying his family don't deserve to have been protected in the run up to that, given that he had turned. Of course they did. They had to be. Mm-hmm. But a decision was made that his evidence was good to go, and his evidence was annihilated during the judgment.
Absolutely annihilated, in every way. And he actually probably did Gerry Hutch a big favour, I'm not sure if he would consider it as that, but he actually probably did him a bigger favour than a disservice, but by turning it out against him,
And you can't, I suppose, totally predict how somebody's going to behave in the witness box under the pressure. And Dowdall was undoubtedly under pressure. I think 5 or 7 days of cross-examination.
I think it was 7,
It was hard going.
Yeah.
But on the very basic level, somebody should have been able to look at those 2 key pieces of evidence he was giving against Hutch and say, where's the corroboration? Because it's not there.
Yeah, it wasn't there.
It wasn't there.
No.
And yet he was still put forward.
Was it a scrambling point at that stage? Was it that the fact that they had one single charge against the monk, and then they kind of were like, right, in order to, we probably maybe should have had more, but now to corroborate this, this guy clearly, has contacted us and wants to talk, and let's just try and shoehorn all of this into making this work. And it didn't work.
But to go back to the costs of it, since 2017, 18, whatever, he has been in prison. So that's a certain cost that would have been there anyway.
Yeah.
He's just been held pretty much in isolation and protection within the prison service.
In Limerick, yeah.
That's not a huge extra cost. His father was in prison for a period of time until his release. But you've got his whole family have been either already relocated, or certainly they were protected for a number of years before that Regency trial. And now you have the cost of, the helps that they need to relocate, etc., etc. I mean, this has to have been an enormous cost and a blow to the existence of the witness protection programme.
It is a huge cost. And was it worth it? No, absolutely not.
And there doesn't seem to me, have been a huge amount of narrative around the mistakes that were made. It was like as if you move on. It was so embarrassing, the whole thing, that it has moved on. In the background, is the Regency investigation even still open? Is there any desire to try again? It was the second trial that, this one at least went to the end and there was a verdict, but the previous trial had collapsed. There was an nolle prosequi entered.
I don't think so. No, I think it's done. I think it's entirely done, yeah. Yeah.
So Dowdall, in the middle of it, he goes state witness, but it's the state that puts into place this witness protection programme around him. He doesn't have much of a choice about it. But he does have a choice, or certainly he might have been asked what his desire was and where he wanted to go.
Yeah.
So what did you find out about that?
He wanted to go to California. He wanted to...
California dreaming.
Yeah, California dreaming.
Wouldn't mind going
living
there
on
myself.
the beach. Oh, listen, it'd be great. He seemed to have this image of himself in America, living his best life with his family in the sunshine in California. And he was immediately told, absolutely not a chance. That's not happening.
And would America...
the Americans are trying to get rid of the undocumented Irish and undocumented everybody. So there's no way they're going to take a convicted torturer, a convicted, like someone who's admitted to being a perjurer and someone who's admitted to being involved in one of the most serious organised gangland attacks.
And with links to dissidents as well. But the way the programme works actually is it's a kind of relationship between countries. You know, obviously somebody from here who's in witness protection is to be relocated. A lot of people are coming from disadvantaged backgrounds. They mightn't have a second language, that kind of thing. So, you know, it's obvious that we have links in with the English-speaking countries, with Australia, with America, with Canada, with England, and with anywhere else that they could sort of settle in a little bit of, you know, because you're basically expecting this family to arrive somewhere with a fake backstory. Mm-hmm. They'll have no social media presence.
Yeah.
That all has to be removed.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, Dowdall and his wife, they've 4 daughters. I mean, I think at least 2 or 3 of them are adults now. But that's going to be really difficult for them.
Hugely.
You know? And I think Jonathan Dowdall is the most recognisable person, because of the age we live in, who's ever entered the witness security programme in Ireland.
For sure.
You know, like Charles Bowden and all that. Like, that was years ago.
Yeah.
We don't have that many pictures of them.
No.
Like, Jonathan Dowdall, there's so many pictures of. And I believe he hasn't changed his appearance in prison. I don't think he's grown a beard, anything like that. I think it's going to be really, really difficult. And that's even before we consider his temperament, which I think is very petulant.
Yes, and probably the biggest problem that he'll have going forward is zipping it. I think
Jonathan Dowdall's biggest enemy is Jonathan Dowdall.
Yeah.
You know, because of the type of man he is. He feels wronged. He feels slighted. He feels like he blames everybody else for what's happened to his life. He does not blame himself whatsoever. So how he can then be in another country, be it Australia, be it Canada, be it, we don't know. We'll never be told. But can he kind of hold his own, I don't know, true colours, I suppose.
And also the pressure of that. I mean, to be taken out and away from everyone and everything you know, to be given this backstory that you have to constantly repeat, so you've to constantly lie to anyone you meet. Now, at least a family unit have one another.
Yeah.
It's harder for somebody to do that on their own, even though they're not relying on anybody else to keep up the story. They at least can, I imagine, behind closed doors, talk to one another about what's happened and what's happened in their lives. But you bring anybody into a relationship, into the family unit, and I mean, can you have a relationship with somebody, like a proper relationship, and not tell them exactly who you are?
I don't know. I wouldn't like to try.
And even nowadays, somebody who doesn't have a presence on social media, that's a huge red flag. If you can't Google someone.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Because they will be given a new identity, and they will be helped with things like if they're going on social welfare, if they're looking for jobs, they'll be helped a little bit with that.
Yeah.
But then they're on their own.
Oh, totally on their own. And I think they're given like a phone number of a guard they can ring if there's some kind of problem, be that they feel there's a threat or some kind of issue. But it's pretty much, there you go, Jonathan, and your family. See you later. It's up to you guys now, and each case is a case-by-case basis. So loads of people have entered the witness security programme, and everybody is entirely different. Like the Dowdalls actually have a bit of cash. Other people have nothing.
Yeah.
And Jonathan Dowdall has skills. I'm not sure in relation to the rest of his family. I think some of his daughters are quite well educated. They have skills as well. So they will all just try and have to forge their own life, but they're entitled to come back at any stage. And that's, the guards essentially wipe their hands of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
If they come back, they're on their own as such.
Oh, entirely on their own.
But it's a difficulty for the guards as well, because if they did come back, they can go, it's like having a child who's not doing what they're told, isn't it? You can show them the door, but really, you have to kind of come to the table.
Well, you're still always accountable a little bit.
Totally,
yeah,
totally.
Yeah.
So if Jonathan Dowdall just lands bag and baggage in Dublin Airport and they're like, right, we're here, can the Gardaí completely turn away and say, well, this guy is under threat?
Well, they can, but it won't look good.
No, and also there's always the problem, which happens constantly in the underworld and in gangland situations, that they can't, because there's members of the public around them, and if there is a threat to life, that threat to life is around everywhere they go. Yeah,
that's true. I'd be surprised if he just landed back.
And do you think maybe I'm being naive, but does anybody want to kill Jonathan Dowdall?
I mean, he managed to insult the dissidents.
Yes.
He definitely managed to insult the Hutch organised crime gang. But I think
IRA, what their previous existence.
I think the biggest problem is when he looks in the mirror. You know, I think he will be the architect and master of his own downfall. All of that. Like I mean, is there a viable threat to his life? I'm not sure.
Well, certainly I don't think anybody's going to risk their own freedom at this point.
Yeah.
For Jonathan Dowdall, there's an element of that this guy is destroying himself pretty much, you know, enough, and maybe they feel that it doesn't need a bullet, you know, and the risk to somebody else's freedom. But where has he been for the last, let's say the last year, as he's sort of been gearing up for this release and his reuniting with his family?
So he's been in Limerick prison. So he was in Wheatfield, which was, I suppose, traditionally a Hutch jail, you know, at the height of the feud. And then he's been in Limerick for some time. And he's been in isolation. He's been on kind of 23-hour lockup. His cell is very close to Barbie Kardashian, who was let out, I think, at the beginning of this month, wasn't it?
So would they have mixed at all?
Well, I believe there was a few issues. Now, look, she'd be very unstable, I think, you know, and there's a lot of issues there. But she has certainly been complaining to prison officers that he's been kind of threatening her, mouthing off at her, hurling a bit of abuse kind of based on her, you know, physical appearance, her transgenderism, all of that. So she has certainly claimed that there's been rows between the two of them. But I mean, she said a lot of things, as we heard in some of those videos, since she got out of prison. But he's kind of in there living a quiet life. His wife and some of his daughters have kind of visited every weekend, and actually they did actually visit him last weekend, in possibly the last visit. So
that means they're still in the country too.
Well, they visited him on Sunday of last week. Because I thought they might have gone out ahead of him, but sure, look, maybe they have now.
Maybe they haven't. They come back to see him.
Yeah. And then there was there's been so much speculation about how he will get out of the country. And I don't know if you've heard, like, someone suggested to me they might use an Irish military aircraft to get him safely out of, you know, from point A to point B.
I'd say they're going to put him on a commercial airline somewhere.
Yeah, I mean,
I would be very surprised if the state used a military aircraft.
I would be surprised too, but then, you know, they did that from Dubai in terms of McGovern, so that I think that's where the suggestion comes from. But one way or the other, he's going to be out of here, you know, unless he suddenly changes his mind. But I mean, if he stays in Ireland, you'd have to wonder, what is there for Jonathan Dowdall? What could he possibly, you know,
rebuild?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I wouldn't hire him to be my electrician. Would you?
No, I definitely wouldn't. No, but maybe we're a bit odd.
But I mean, I don't think anybody would.
No, he's certainly made a mess of things. I think we could.
Yeah, well, I mean, his so look, this is possibly his time to reinvent himself. You know, and that's essentially, I suppose, what he's agreed to try and do. How that works out, how that is in the actual day-to-day world.
It's just hard for us to imagine how it can happen. And knowing people previously who were on this programme, who were relocated and who built up a life, it seems to me there are people who can survive it, who can settle into a new community and who seem to be, they struggle, I think, mentally from the break with what they always knew.
Yeah.
Some people can survive it and have that ability to survive it, but many other people don't.
Well, you see, it's about the psyche, isn't it? Like, it's, I think even Dermot Ahern, the former Justice Minister, came out after when he was retired and said, it's just not quite in the Irish psyche. It's very difficult because we're such a small island with such a small population. And if we're like, okay, off you go to Canada to start your new life, it's very difficult for people to make that work. Whereas if you're in America and you're told to move to the other end of America, you're still in America. Mm-hmm. Whereas in Ireland, we're like, everything is so new. It's an entirely different culture, entirely different life. It's not that popular a program. And the other issue is we don't know anything about the program because they don't tell us, because it's not on a statutory basis whatsoever. So we really don't know what happens. And it seems to be that what happens is depending on who you are, you know? So Jonathan Dowdall is the most recognisable criminal to enter this. Whereas then we have entirely innocent people like the Collins family in Limerick. And I know of other people who were like a truck driver who were involved in transporting in drugs that they didn't even realise that they were, and they were relocated their entire family to Australia. Some of these people are faceless people.
Yes.
Jonathan Dowdall is not faceless.
No.
You know, we all know who he is, you know, and like you say, we live, the world in which we live in, I mean, to keep anonymous, I think it's going to be a very challenging. He thinks he's had challenging times. I think he's got more challenging times ahead.
I suppose the big question is, has he finished talking? Because we do also know that he certainly feels he's been very unfairly portrayed and very unfairly spoken about. Mm-hmm. And he likes to talk. He likes to give his side of it.
Yeah.
Will he zip it?
I don't know. I mean, like you say, like he likes to talk. He put himself forward as a councillor for Sinn Féin. He was elected a councillor for Sinn Féin.
Will he be in the hot seat here?
I mean, I would be shocked. But I mean, I'd applaud you if you get him there. But like, anyone who puts themselves forward as a politician likes to talk. When he didn't last very long, was it a year? A year? At the same time as the waterboarding incident? It was all kind of in around the same time.
But I do think, having said all that, he will have the support of his family. And he has enjoyed the support of his family, and he has enjoyed the support of his wife and his daughters and his father from the beginning up to this point, and they are going together, and that has to stand for something to him.
Yeah, I mean, it's a brave new world for Jonathan Dowdall.
But an interesting story, and perhaps we have or we haven't come to the end of it. Who knows? Thanks, Ali.